I also like to talk about specific responsibilities of the host, of the server, of the chef, of the cook, of the busser. Each person should have a specific role within your restaurant, and this should be designated from the get-go. And then finally, we talk about what to do if an allergic reaction occurs, how to use an EpiPen, and to me as an allergist, I sort of look at being trained in EpiPen administration as sort of like CPR. You have some idea of how to use it, and hopefully you'll never have to use it, but you might. So, you may also think, well, how much food allergy training do I really need? How important is it? And well, I'm going to say that it could be, it could be part of the law to have food allergy training provided to your restaurant workers. So Rhode Island, Massachusetts, and Maryland currently have legislation in place that requires restaurants to provide training in food allergies for their workers. The issue is, though, there is no standardized training protocol. And so what one restaurant does may be so different from another. And there have been lawsuits against restaurants who have failed to acknowledge and prepare for customers who have food allergies. So the number one, I guess, tip that I say is create a plan. So I don't care if, as a physician, it doesn't matter. I don't want the conception or the misconception that food allergies, oh, it's just a preference. This is a true, potentially life-threatening medical condition, and it's not necessarily your job to decide, oh, well, how real is it, how mild is it, or is it severe? And so really, the goal is to minimize risks for your establishment. So create a written plan. Write down who is going to specifically answer guest questions regarding the menu. Who's going to be responsible for checking ingredients? What steps should the kitchen staff follow to avoid cross-contamination? And how should staff members handle an allergic reaction? And then once you've created your plan, practice it. Again, food allergy training is a process. Having a training once a year for that new employee that started is not enough. I sort of look at it kind of like fire drills in elementary school. Keep doing it a few times throughout the year. Be sure every new employee understands your food allergy policy. Give them a written copy of what your food allergy protocol is. And most importantly, train your employees to take food allergies seriously because, again, it is life-threatening. And then lastly, I always say develop a checklist that managers can review with employees prior to serving guests. So when it comes to my patients, if they've had food reactions, I actually tell my patients to be super proactive and ask your restaurant questions. And I specifically tell them to ask the restaurant, are you willing to serve me in your establishment? And you should feel free as a restaurant to say, I don't know if it's, if the protocols that we have in place, if it's safe. I also tell my patients to ask their staff or ask restaurant staff, how often do you train your workers on food allergy safety? And then do you have a separate area to prepare foods for special diets? Do you have separate utensils and cutting boards? And do you have any sort of specialty products or specialty foods for customers with food allergies? And the one thing that I'm going to say is, so my goal is to ideally develop a standardized protocol that can be used for all restaurants. But the reality is there is no one-size-fits-all food allergy protocol. What we may recommend for a large restaurant may be different for a small restaurant. What we recommend for a chain may be different for a solo independent restaurant. Again, there are other factors such as frequent menu changes, multi-source ingredients versus one-stop shop ingredients. And in general, from what I've heard from my patients, what they really expect is that they want a restaurant who takes food allergies seriously. And I can't harp on the fact that this is so important because I think food allergies get a bad rap in the media just with regards to, well, is it real or is it not? And also, many patients are, they're just a little nervous that someone's going to look down upon them or be demeaning because of their food allergy or food intolerance. And so just, be as compassionate and as understanding as you can and do the best that you can to accommodate their dietary restrictions. And I actually recommend that the restaurant should be the one to initiate the conversation. At the end of the day, it's the patient's responsibility, but from the restaurant side, be proactive. And allow your guests access to the chef and to the manager. I can't tell you how much they appreciate being able to speak with someone who knows what the food allergy protocol is within that restaurant. So for the front of the house, what I usually recommend include number one is a protocol on how to handle the order of a customer with a food allergy. Again, written protocol. I also recommend that you have one point person in that restaurant who can answer and deal with all food allergy concerns. If President Obama can appoint a Ebola czar, your restaurant can appoint a food allergy czar. And so this person, your point person, they should know specific language and on how to communicate with customers who have food allergies. This person should be able to answer all food allergy questions that come by phone, because many of your customers will call ahead of time to find out what your protocols are. And also, you need someone who is well trained to deal with food allergy customer complaints, and we'll talk about this later. So the number one tip that I recommend is for restaurateurs is ask your customer if there are food allergies. I would have to say that 99% of the time that I have gone out to eat, no one asks me if I have a food allergy. And you can't tell if someone has a food allergy or not. And you shouldn't be able to tell. And I want someone to ask me the moment I go in and say I'd like to make a reservation. By far, it's the cheapest and easiest intervention you can do, even if you do nothing else. And also, this starts off the rest of your food allergy protocol. Once you've alerted someone, that person is then going to alert the rest of the staff. And again, whether this is done by your host, your hostess, or whoever is greeting the customer, it doesn't matter. Just pick a point person and make sure someone is going to ask. So, if you are the host or hostess, again, you are on the front line dealing with customers, so you want to start off on the right foot. You're going to ask about food allergies, and I even recommend do it while a guest is making their reservation. And if you didn't ask when they made their reservation, ask them before they're seated, because again, you want to make sure that the table that you're choosing, number one, has been thoroughly cleaned, and we'll talk about proper cleaning protocols. But also, you may not want to choose a table close to the kitchen, and this is because of that whole issue with aerosolized food proteins. Again, if you're planning on steaming anything in the kitchen, if any aerosolized proteins come into the dining hall, you want to make sure that food allergic patient is as far away from that as possible, because again, they know they could potentially have a reaction even if they're not eating the food. I also recommend that my patients carry a chef card, and so the host or hostess should also ask if this diner has a chef card, and I'll show you what that is. And then the host should also alert the server, alert the manager, alert the chef that you have a guest with food allergies. So this is what the chef card looks like. I usually tell my patients to carry 3 with them when they're going out to eat. I want them to write the food allergy that they have, and they should give one, again, to the server, to the chef, and to the manager. So there is no confusion about what the allergy is. If you are a server, again, it's your job to ensure that the chef, manager, and other wait staff are aware if the host hasn't already alerted them. As a server, I want you to ask about food allergies even if your host and hostess already did. Also ask if they carry the chef card if you don't already have it with you. When you are describing menu items, be very clear about all the ingredients in a particular dish, and if you're not sure, ask. Do not make up something. Your customers will appreciate it if you're honest, and honestly, you could trigger a life-threatening reaction. I'm also a big believer in that the server should not prepare any part of the food. I think that the chef who is preparing the food should be the sole person doing that. I think by having multiple people actually hitting the food creates the possibility for accidents and cross-contamination. What I do believe, though, is that the server should only be the one to serve the specific food allergy guest. The server who took the order should be the one to deliver that plate. Customers actually get reassurance knowing that that's the person that I gave my order to, and that's the person who's delivering my meal. I'm also not a believer in plate stacking. Again, if you have a food allergic customer, that single plate should be carried out only. And again, you want to check the ticket on the plate before you bring the plate out. And then check it one more time before you're about to put it on the table in front of the guest. And again, using a red sticker or using some sort of, a purple tag or some sort of bold marker to identify that, okay, this was a specially prepared meal for your dietary restriction. And then finally, if you are the chef or if you're working in the kitchen, you are the mastermind behind the food, and it's your job to oversee preparation of the dish. So again, collect the chef card from the server. If there's anything that's unclear on that chef card and the server is unable to properly answer your questions, go out and speak to your customer, only because the customer really, truly will appreciate it. Again, we've gone over a lot of this in some of the other talks, but have a separate area for creating dishes for your food allergic guests. Have separate utensils, separate cutting boards. Never reuse unwashed pans, tongs, spatulas, or other utensils. And again, mark your plate with a ticket or a chip. And then finally, as the manager, I think that it's your responsibility to make sure that everyone knows what their role is when they're dealing with a food allergic customer. And again, talk to the guests about their food allergies. Again, know what the role is of each person. And then be familiar with the ingredients on the menu, even the specials. And be ready to train new staff on protocols. And in general, I just want to say that it's okay to say, I don't know. I would rather you say, I don't know, than serve a patient a meal that could have a potential allergen in it. And then telephone inquiries. Again, the big thing that I'm going to say is that, so diners will call ahead of time, have one point person to talk about to answer questions prior, because I think that if you just do some general training for everyone without giving one specific person detailed training, you're not going to fully answer your customers' questions. And when it comes to complaints, I would say that 90% of patients who call a restaurant saying that I had a food reaction are calling to find out what ingredients were in the dish that was served. And that is it. And the one thing that I'm going to say is do not react defensively or dismiss the guest's concerns. We talked about cross-contamination, so the only thing I'm going to say is that when you are cleaning, soap and water is really the best way to clean. Do not just use a plain wipe. Do not use hand sanitizers to clean your hands. They won't necessarily remove enough of the food protein. And then for your menus, I'm a big believer in having a separate food allergy menu with each ingredient on it. The one thing that I am not so fond of is using icons to identify food allergies, meaning if there's egg in the meal, you put a picture of an egg, or if it's a spicy meal, you put a picture of a pepper. I think it's just confusing. Just use words. And then I think we'll skip over this. And then the last thing I'm going to say is that what should you do if someone starts to have a reaction? So the whole point of this is that it's not your job to decide, well, how severe is it? Is it not that severe? Because something that starts off so minor can rapidly become life-threatening. And so if there is any concern that someone is having a reaction in your restaurant, call 911. Don't try and deal with it on your own or within the restaurant. Don't send someone to Duane Reade to get some Benadryl and see if that'll help the patient. Call 911. I also say don't throw away the plate, just because patients forget what they eat when they're coming into the hospital or to the office. And so sometimes having a picture of that plate and potentially getting a list of ingredients can be very helpful. We talked a little bit about the EpiPen. There are 3 different types, or epinephrine injectors, excuse me. There's EpiPen and AuVQ. AuVQ is the one that will actually speak and instruct you on how to use it. And if you do choose to use an EpiPen, don't pull a John Travolta move and decide to go straight for the heart. Really, you want to just inject on the outside part of the thigh. And the reason why I'm even mentioning this is because 20% of the time an EpiPen or epinephrine is injected, it's being given by someone other than the person having a reaction. So there is a chance that you may have to administer it. And epinephrine can be injected directly through clothing. And then I think this is where I'm going to end. Thank you so much for having me. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to email me, or you can reach out to me through our website,